Hi, I'm Jen Campbell, and this is ArtAbout, and I'm sitting here today with AlexWeatherup. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you, Jen?
Excellent.
Thank you for having me.
So he has brought some of his poetry here, and I am so excited about this. I love your poetry.
Thank you.
So I'm so glad you're here with us today. But I wanted to ask you one question before we get into your poetry.
Sure.
And that it's a fundamental question. When did you first consider yourself a poet or an artist?
In sort of the conventional sense, I guess when I was in college and I switched my major from business finance to English, kind of knew that would change the course of my life based on what I was going to do for work and all that, and it was just really important for me to focus on English and poetry and poetics. And I think once I made that decision, that was sort of when I kind of really dove into it and kind of felt it.
That's awesome.
And then, in the unconventional sense, I think we're all artists. There's art in everyday life constantly.
Yes.
So, try to do things well and do them right and do them artistically, and it comes into every aspect of our life.
Put your stamp on something.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you have some poetry.
I do.
Do you want to grace us with a poem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So this first one is called William Tell and His Bow. Took some of these excerpts from my grandfather's journal when him and my grandma went to Europe in the late 50s, and I just thought, I have a lot of his journals, and he was a very well-spoken man, and I really liked all that stuff, so I took some of it and sort of made it into William Tell and His Bow.
Got it.
William Tell and His Bow. Because of the holiday, the Louvre was closed. Mary was impressed with the French pastry that tasted just as good as it looked. Horrible coffee, good chocolate, delicious, thick soups, beautiful clothes with prohibitive prices. We boarded the Albert Express for Switzerland with a bottle of wine and a big bag of pastries. Take me back to Paris. I can't stand the fresh air and healthy people of Switzerland. Arrived in Lucerne with time to enjoy the fountains and all the squares. They were boarded up a couple days later. Delicious cheese fondue, murals painted on the old houses, a quaint town for William Tell with his bow and barefooted boy. A train from the Alps to Venice, train to Florence, Hotel Majestic, whole city is an art gallery.
Oh, wow.
Michelangelo Square, mosaic jewelry, leather goods, Flores Hotel in Rome, Vatican, Parthenon. St. Paul without the walls, St. Peter in chains, nightclub tour of the city, Old Appian Way, Capuchin Church with all the bones.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
I'll go. That's great. That's great. When you think of your poetry, do you have a studio, and how does that studio influence your art?
I don't necessarily have a studio per se. I have a very small, comically small writing desk.
Okay.
But, I write most of my poetry either in the morning or late at night. And I would say, if I had a studio, it would be other people's books. I read a lot of other people's poetry. And, Billy Collins said the trouble with poetry is it encourages the writing of more poetry. And that's kind of what gets me going, is reading the poets that I love and and seeing their techniques and everything they're doing, and then trying to, take those, make them my own in some sort of way, and then write.
I love that.
So that kind of comes down to that.
So it's you live through the works of other people, and that inspires you.
Yeah, it's sort of a kill your idols kind of thing. I think that, as poets, we should all try and read as much poetry from as many different backgrounds of people that we can, and then learn all these different fundamentals and techniques and everything you can about the poetry. So when you come to a poem, you have all the tools necessary to write it.
I love that. Yeah. Do you have another poem for us? Okay, cool. I am so ready. Ready for my snapping fingers.
This is called What I've Learned About Smashing Metal. What I've learned about smashing metal. Your life will Your life will be gigantic, built gently with touch. Your material hands building young ideas, pining to grow. Your copper odor skin as malleable as your talent. I've never really been a hands-on kind of guy, but I do like having my hands on you. Oh. And if you put your mind to something, anything, let it be a vessel. And when you smash it, let it become what it wants, not what we want.
I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about your process, because you said you write in the morning, you write in the evening. Are you trying to pull from the day that you had, or?
Sometimes, on occasion, yeah. Mostly, it's just finding a way to tell these little miniature stories, where poetry should say in 12 lines what a novel says in 12 chapters. So I try to focus on like an emotion or an image or an idea, and then play around with that, and then sort of you can let a poem kind of grow on its own, and see where it goes. And
that's awesome.
I usually end up coming back to them years later. I don't think a poem is ever officially finished, only abandoned. So going back, and I also think that we as people, obviously we change over the years. So I like to go back and read old poetry of mine and change words and add thoughts. And
would you call it reworking it, or would you call it, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, some poetry, some of the poets' old poetry should stay the same, and they exist in the past, and that's great. And then I do like to update them and rewrite them and rework them and try and make them better.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool. Do you have another one for us?
Sure. This one is called Between Dog and Wolf. It comes from a French saying "entre chien et loup," which is how. It's an expression in French to describe a sunset. So it refers to the moment when the sky darkens and vision becomes unclear and you can't really tell between dog and wolf.
Got it.
So between dog and wolf. Sundown blues and rain, Plum Island in the rear view, beach mist air for the ride home reddening our eyes and epoxying our skin. With the windows rolled up, I can hear your emphatics more easily. But with the sun finally down, it's harder to follow your lips as you share them.
That I loved.
Thank you.
That I loved. There's a tarot card called the Moon, and it has an image in the foreground of a wolf and a dog, specifically, and it's tackling the nature of a person, a human, and that we're driven by both of the wild side, the wolf side, and the dog side, which is cultured or like social, you know, and that poem kind of tickles that for me.
Yeah. That's it's funny you mentioned tarot cards, because it is like they're so you can interpret them in so many different ways, and I think that tarot readers, that's almost like they're on the spot to like just basically come up with poems on the spot. Like when they're there, they can read it so many different ways and influence people in so many different ways. That's cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there any topics or poetry forms that you're currently working on, or is it just kind of the like you say, the thing that happened today?
Yeah. I try to push myself to do that. I'm working on a small collection of poems called All Them Black Hoods, and it sort of deals with this idea of like the call of the void, and how I think nowadays I think the void is growing bigger.
Okay, what do you mean by the void?
The void, so the call of the void, this idea that like, we're attracted to things that like are dangerous to us. Sort of like, you go to the edge of a cliff and you look over it and you're like, there's always that like, and you like to jump, but you never do.
But you're tantalized.
Yeah, but that's the call of the void, and I think that's expanding a little bit, at least hopefully in my poems. To include just like the way that that we're growing as people in America, and consumption and Amazon Prime and just everything we need more. We constantly need more, and this void is growing, and it's not getting filled by all this extra things.
Right.
So, yeah, trying to figure out that stopping point of when is that capped? When are we happy with what we have? Because if we didn't have what we would have, we would be killing for what we have.
And maybe that's the dog and the wolf paradigm.
Maybe.
Which the wolf is saying to us, enchanting us to jump over the cliff, like you're saying, and the dog is saying, stay put, be, proper,
Have a nice warm bed at home.
conform,
Yeah.
Conform.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. Do you have another poem for us?
Sure. Yeah. This one is called The Ancestral Method. Somewhere in a dive, we catch up on lost time, or we waste new, inflating the past. But the vapid between us starts to recarbonate when we wipe oil from our laugh lines and stir head with fingers. I feel uneasiness ease as you put your fingers in my mouth, as your laugh lines widen, as you pulse, as your eyes lift to mine, our pasts become a little bit bigger.
That is there's so much imagery there. And it's almost like the words bubble. There's like a notion of automatopoeia where, a word sounds as it means.
Yeah.
And there's so many words in there that pop and kind of give lift to the poem. I love that.
There you go.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I asked, because this is a show about arts on the North Shore.
Yes.
And I kind of was interested in how place informs your art, like the North Shore. Are there parts of the North Shore that inform your art?
Yeah, not sort of in like the idea of like that's where I get inspiration necessarily, but I've been living on the North Shore for about a year now.
Yeah.
And I feel there's a wonderful sense of community up here, and there's so many like people helping people, small businesses helping small businesses, and I'm from Buffalo, New York. The tagline is a city of good neighbors, and I really feel that up in Beverly. I didn't feel that when I was living in Boston.
Okay.
And I think that it makes it easier to write when you're part of this like community of like arts and all that.
Yep.
And you can only learn so much about a topic or a subject on your own before you need to ask other people for help or ideas.
I love that.
Or being able to bounce things off each other or doing things like this.
Yeah.
Which, made me focus on my poetry a lot this past week,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So like that one that I just read, I wrote that years ago. And just kind of reworked it and played with it a little bit. And I wouldn't have done that without you and without doing this. So I think that's kind of what influences me when it comes to the North Shore is like, going to all these great bookstores, talking to other poets, talking to other writers, and getting excited about it and putting it at the forefront of my mind,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I find that the community around the North Shore is very loving to arts.
Yeah, it really is.
And there's so many, I'm interested in this show to show the institutions and a lot of the artists that are well known, but I also want to just get that person who is your bartender or your server who also is in love with art.
Yeah.
And you don't know, that they're a great artist, they're a great painter, they're a great,
Yeah.
because it's covert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of covert, you have a little covert book nook.
I do, yeah.
Can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah. So I own and operate a small bottle shop on Rantoul Street at 112 Rantoul. It's just called The Bottle Shop. It's a boutique wine store, liquor store, marketplace. And then I do have like a little covert bookstore called Garden City Books in there, which is all used, all poetry. And yeah, I figure if I'm going to be there at work all day, every day, I want to be surrounded by the things I love, and one of those is poetry.
Right.
So, but I want to, not give back to the community, but make poetry accessible to other people, and like the things that I love, like I want people to be able to read them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you go into the bookstore, I want to give people a little visual.
Yeah.
Because it's very covert.
It is, yeah.
So when you walk into the bookstore, the
Bottle shop.
Bottle shop. When you walk into the bottle shop, you have to kind of walk down a little ways, and then it's kind of to your right.
Yep. So yeah, if you were to go into the shop and walk left down in the corner near the beer coolers and that, you turn right. There's a beautiful wall of it's a wine rack, and I knocked some of the shelves out and made just one long shelf of poetry. So it's not a ton, but it is very small, but makes me happy. So.
I love that. Do you have a motto or a creed that you go by when you're thinking about art and producing art?
Yeah. Avoid the passive.
Avoid the passive.
Avoid the passive.
Okay.
To be very, very like. I mean, when it comes to your characters, your subject material, and stuff like that, you want to be as invested in it as much as possible. And then when it comes to I'm a big advocate of lie, cheat, steal, kill. So when
you're creating art, but you're kind of stealing it from your favorite poets?
Yes, yeah.
Go for it.
It kind of goes back to that sort of kill your idols thing. I really like learning as much as you can from these great writers, and especially too a lot of the writers that I read now are younger than I am.
So who are you stealing from?
Stealing not necessarily stealing inspiration, but
I like stealing. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean originality's hiding your sources.
Yeah.
But Kava Akbar, Bianca Stone, and then I love Charles Simic. But some of these younger writers, they're just wildly inspiring, and I like to read them, be inspired by them, try and emulate them in some way, and then make it my own, and then sort of drop that and use that as a base, and then build on it.
How do you make it your own?
Take my life, my ideas, my convictions, and sort of put them in the poetry, and past experiences that I've had that I can't really exactly articulate right away, but I need some sort of structure and form to start with, and then I fill in the blanks, I guess.
Fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Thinking about yourself and, say, a younger artist, do you have advice for a younger artist?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say it's a younger poet, a younger artist. I would say, consume. Take everything you can and learn. And learn, and 80% of it is reading, and 20% of it is writing, and then there's another portion of it that's experience, that's living life, and going out and making bad decisions and making fun decisions, and then having stories and having all that, and then taking the time to really sit down and work on your craft.
Right.
So it is what I think is really cool about poetry, specifically poetry when it comes to art, is there's no way to get rich writing poetry.
Come on.
No, there's no way.
I'm trying.
There's no way. There's even the most famous poets, or whatever.
Yeah.
They're also teachers. There's no way to become rich in poetry. We do this because we love it, and you have to.
Yeah.
You can potentially become rich and famous from even writing fiction, or being a photographer, not with poetry.
Okay.
This is it.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. It really takes a lot of commitment to continue doing that over your life, and you're only going to do it if it's something that you really, really love.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Have there been times in your life where you've kind of stepped away from poetry, and you're saying this is too hard, or?
Yeah, not because it was too hard. I've always enjoyed it. I think it's a lot of fun for me too. So it's not it's challenging and it's fun, but I think there's been times when I stepped away when I'm working a lot, or I was a bartender for a very long time, so it was going out drinking a lot and partying a lot, and you don't really write as much when you're hungover.
That's true.
So that, and then honestly, when COVID hit and we were all trapped in our homes, started writing again, started creating, and then
So COVID was good for you.
COVID was, yeah, it was okay for me. Yeah, it was. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, in the past when I've just been working too much or, you know, out partying and that. But I always do come back to it, and
You always come back.
Yeah, always
It's like
come
a
back.
siren song or something.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seduces you.
It does
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten involved in groups with other poets and worked with other poets?
Yeah, not since college so much, which is kind of a bummer. But I did when I was out. I went to UNLV in Las Vegas, and there was. I mean, I had wonderful teachers and really great, you know, peers. So I did a lot back then, and even a few years after school. But as of lately, not so much. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to, and you
Yeah.
know, I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that on the North Shore, and I'm really excited about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Do you have any other poems for us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's see. How about this one?
Okay.
This one is called Yoga Starts Early Tomorrow. You should set an alarm so you don't miss it.
I love that.
Yoga starts early tomorrow. You should set an alarm so you don't miss it. As we lay back, I think, if stretching by yourself feels so good, it's almost sexual, it must feel wild being pressed down and stretched back by a warm body swarming over you. So I bring your legs to 11:05, press down, hold, like I'm setting an alarm clock. I lock in the time at 10:10. Now you exhale.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as you probably know, every show I try to cap it with a poem
Yeah.
that I wrote during the show. I try to be a little covert about it.
Yeah.
And this is your poem, and I date it and I sign it, and I'll give it to you. You can treasure it,
Fantastic.
or you could throw it away, whatever you want to do.
Probably treasure it.
Treasure it. There you go. So it's titled "Living in Books." Hiding in a bottle shop, impassioned by projects, tripping over our pieces of you. I am lifted by your art, not running like water, but on the edges of Beverly. We are in its eye.
I love that. Yeah.
So that's your poem
Thank you.
for ArtAbout.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, AlexWeatherup, for coming
Thank you, Jen.
to ArtAbout.
Thank you. This was outstanding.
Thank
I'm
you.
very honored that you put your faith and time into me. It's really nice.
Your poetry is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm Jen Campbell. This is ArtAbout, and we are all about arts on the North Shore.